Hello, hello. This is Schism here. I got a 2,500 point battle report. My Skaven versus the Dark Elves. Starting off on my opponent's left, he has a bolt thrower, and then he has a Charybdis. Behind those ruins there, we're just treating it as a fence. He has 30 black orc corsairs with a BSB in there with heavy armor, sea dragon cloak, a shield, and a sword of might. To the right of that is another bolt thrower. Then the always classic 20 Blackguard, and in there is Malekith, and he's a level 4 sorcerer. And he rolled up Word of Pain, Doombolt, Shroud of Despair, and Power of Darkness. To the right of that unit, there is 30 Dark Elf Spearmen, and in there is a level 1 with a Dispel Scroll. And for spells, a rolled up Wild Form. To the right of that is another Bolt Thrower. There is 5 Dark Riders. And to the right of that, there is another bolt thrower behind the foliage there. And then he has 6 shades ready to move into the building there. Starting off on my far left, I have a doom wheel. To the right of that, right in front of the building, there is a rat dart. And right next to that is another doom wheel. Now, this might look a little awkward. I never intended on having 2 doom wheels so close to each other for the purpose of them potentially zapping each other. However, on the far right-hand side of the board, there was a lot of foliage and dangerous terrain, and there was no real targets. The whole meat of his army is here on the left flank. He's got his 3 blocks, his Charybdis, all great targets for a doom wheel to potentially zap. And on the right side of the board, the far right, he had just had his Dark Riders, a Bolt Thrower, and some Shades. Nothing I really want to go after with Doom Wheels, especially with a dangerous terrain, and the Dark Riders just outclassed me in the movement phase. So it was either between the only spots after I deployed the rest of my army I had was right here and the far right flank, and there's no targets over there. So I just hope I got to pass some restrained tests, or that they'll zap the rat dart in the middle or something. As long as they don't zap each other, I should be pretty good here. To the right of that Doom wheel, there is 36 clan rats, and in that unit is a Warlock engineer with a Doom rocket. To the right of that unit, there is 40 storm vermin with the standard of discipline. My BSB is in there in the left corner with armor, silver steel, a great weapon, and a luck stone. Also in that unit, taking up some frontage in the front rank, there is a warlord on a bone breaker. He's rocking the ogre blade, the talisman of preservation, and an enchanted shield. To the right of that, the chaos giant spine beast is a hell pit abomination. Next to them, there is 36 more clan rats. There's a level 4 with a dispel scroll and 1 warp stone token he rolled up. For spells, I probably got the best set I could ever wish for when I'm looking for a caster to be at range with the spells of ruin here. And I got Scorch, which is the template, doesn't scatter. Warp Lightning is cheap, get some strength 5 hits in. The dreaded 13th for unit decimation, and Crack's Call to force some initiative tests, which really isn't useful against the Dark Elves. But the only other options I really had was the really I was able to choose a few, but none of the other ones. Doesn't really have any flying, and so Howling Warp Gale wouldn't really work. And I don't like the multiple frenzies on my unit because you lose D6 at the end of the phase. So I stuck with a Crack's Call. Potentially it could come in handy. Behind that unit is one of those Warp Lightning cannons. To the right of that, there is 60 Plague Monks with the Plague Banner. And to the right of that, running on my forces, there is another rat dart in the woods here. And you can see I could have put my Doom Wheel right here on this flank, but like I said, there's no good targets. And look at all the terrain it would have to traverse through. So I'd have to have some near perfect rolls with a random movement to avoid this. And yeah, it just wasn't really a good spot for the Doom Wheel. So that's why they ended up so close to each other. Despite me having more deployable units, I end up winning turn 1, and I move up like so. And right here in the center, my Hell Pit moves to go. We treated all these rocky crags here as impassable terrain, so my Hell Pit commits to one side to swoop around and then arc back in the middle here. I move up the clan rats behind the Doom Wheel. My general's unit surges forward with a little bravado here, a little swag. Not really afraid of too much he has to offer because my Bone Breaker will soak up most of the damage in the front rank, and that's a lot of storm vermin to deal with. My Plague Monks move up to the left side of the building here. I could have gone to the right side, but look at it. There's nothing over there, so they move up this way. Then in the magic phase, I rolled double ones in my cast my first spell, so it was pretty uneventful there. Pretty disparaging considering the long range devastation. And I made sure I was up within 24 inches, so I could have tried the 13th if I rolled enough dice. But double ones on my warp lightning was pretty yeah, pretty grim. So turn one, he moves his Dark Riders up to take some shots off at the Rat Dart. The Shades move into the building. You can see him inhabiting the top there. His Charybdis angles himself to face off against the Doomwheel to the far left, and he moves up a bit. The rest of his army stays put and doesn't move. He's got some bolt throwers and some range stuff and some magic missiles in the magic phase, so we just remain steadfast, waiting for me to come to him. And between the bolt thrower here on the right and the Shades, the Shades and the Dark Riders, he manages to take out the Rat Dart. And the Shades did actually shoot at the Plague Monks here and took 2 of their number off. And his bolt throwers all open up, all the ones that can here that see the Hell Pit, and manage to do a wound to the Hell Pit, so he's down a wound already. My turn 2. I end up taking my Doomwheel and looking at this. I know the odds of me getting random movement enough to actually connect with the Charybdis is impossible. So yeah, I really didn't want to rely on my lightning shots being strong enough to take out the Charybdis. So if I moved up, odds are he would have got the charge, and with his strength 7 attacks and his higher weapon skill, he probably just would have decimated the Doomwheel, and that Doomwheel would have been all for naught. So I decided to take the yellow part of the Skaven here, and I just turn it around and I go back towards my main lines. I'm not really concerned about zapping this unit of rats here, because that's why there's 36 of them. So the Doomwheel decides to turn around and head back towards my lines, leaving the Charybdis flapping out in the wind there. And my Rat Dart moves up to get out of his line of sight, so we can't charge it. In the center here, the Doomwheel makes it a mad dash for his lines. It's well within, automatic charge range of all the Dark Elves, but, it's there to do what it's going to do. So the rest of my army moves up behind the Doomwheel here, and my Hell Pit rolls pretty paltry here and barely makes it around the side of that crag. My Mage's unit moves up and arcs itself to get a direct line of sight on any of his units there and within 24 inches, just so I'll be able to maximize my spell effectiveness. And my Plague Monk charges these 6 Shades in the building. Yeah, it's overkill, but if I don't take care of these guys now, they're going to sit there all game, and they're just going to take wounds off whatever they want. So I take the Plague Monks, and I just throw them in the building. In a magic phase, I roll 6 dice at the dreaded 13th. Now, I don't really have a choice but to 6 dice any of my spells, because Malekith here is pretty beastly in the Dispel phase, and the casting phase for that matter, because you can, with one of his abilities, you can pretty much low ball your casting, and if you fail to cast, then you get to roll an additional d6 to help yourself cast. So, and it goes for dispelling too. So he can low ball his dispel attempts, and if he fails to dispel, oh well, let me throw an extra dice at it. And as long as you're reasonably close with your rolls, that extra dice will easily put you over the top, and it adds to irresistibles. So he's not having any problem dispelling my spells. I think I rolled a 9 or a 10 in the magic phase. I threw a few dice at Warp Lightning. He matched my dice, and even if he failed, he got the extra dice. So it can add potentially an innumerable amount of dispel dice to your dispel phase. So yeah, I was down to my last 6 dice, and I'm like, screw it. The only way I'm going to get anything off is if I miscast, and if I'm going to miscast anything, I'm going to miscast the 13th. So I threw the dice here, all my 6 dice, and I rolled 6, 6, 6, 4, 4, 2. Now, not only does that get off, but I just tripped 6 this spell. So I get off the dreaded 13th on his juiciest unit here, his Blackguard. Of course, there's no other unit really worth dreaded the 13th, but really all of them are, but none of them nearly as much as these nice, juicy, expensive Blackguard. So the spell resolves, and I roll a 20. Now, note that I said that there's 20 Blackguard in this unit. Well, all 20 of them bit the dust. So there you see poor Malekith all by himself. His whole unit just got turned to rats around him. And even worse yet, he had an assassin in this unit. And since the unit, we looked it up in the book, and because the unit was destroyed, the assassin was destroyed with the unit. So yeah, that's pretty devastating. Not only did the expensive Blackguard unit die, his assassin died when the unit got melted away. So, and then I take my warp lightning shot, and I managed to nick off 6 of these Black Ark Corsairs with the warp lightning cannon. And in the combat here, of course, I throw 10 of my plague monks in there. That's 30 attacks, and they promptly dispatch the shades here, and I lose 2 of mine in the combat. So I just take the building, and there I am sitting in the building. So Dark Elf's turn 2, he takes his, out of desperation, he takes his Black Ark Corsairs and charges the front of my Doom Wheel. There's no use sitting around now without his Blackguard, and his lines are very much disrupted from the decimation of the Blackguard. The Charybdis moves up to get towards the middle because it needs to add its effectiveness to this fray here. Malekith decides to join the Spearman unit for reasons of safety and security. There's nothing funner than being surrounded by a bunch of friends, especially when there's 100 plus rats facing down on you. His Dark Riders move up around here to slow down the advance of the Hell Pit Abomination. And in the magic phase, he throws some dice on Wild Form. He casts it irresistibly. He throws 3 dice at it. So these Corsairs are +1/+1. And the miscast, he rolls a 6, and he does the small template on his Spearman. He does 7 Spearmen dead, and he takes a wound on his level 1 Beast Caster. This bolt thrower here opens up and fells 3 of the giant rats. And then all his bolt throwers remaining open up, and they take 3 more wounds off the Hell Pit. So that thing is pretty dang close to dead. In the combat here, I managed to do 2 wounds to him, but he sinks 3 wounds down on my Doom Wheel. I'm leadership 10 with a reroll, but I do manage to fail this because he has rank, so I'm not steadfast. So it's a rerollable 7. I flee straight through my unit, and his Corsairs overrun are right in front of the bulk of my army now. Way out in the open. My turn 3, I take these giant rats and I charge his bolt thrower crew, fully knowing that the bolt thrower crew is 100 times better than these rats, but if I can stop it from firing, then that's less shooting I have to wither. Now, I had an option here. Well, the Doom Wheel has this one narrow passage there. I don't have to take difficult terrain if I go through. So I take the Doom Wheel, and I know the Charybdis is going to get into it, but I just want to slow it down from getting into anything else. So I take the Doom Wheel, and hopefully I'll be able to zap it with some lightning shots during my shooting phase. So the Doom Wheel, and I slide it through the narrow passage and just get in the way. Now, I could have charged the Corsairs with both my meat and potatoes units here, the 36 Clan Rats and my General's unit. But I think that's a gross misallocation of my General's unit. He's more apt to go after Malekith because my Rat Warlord is pretty well suited to take him out. And the Clan Rats probably aren't going to be able to take them out, but I don't want to waste my Doom Rocket in that unit if they do get into combat. So I decide not to charge here, and instead I move my Doom Rocket thrower out of the unit, and I hold steadfast with the rest of my units there. And so I move him within 14 inches of the center of the Spearman unit. Hopefully I'll be able to unleash hell on them. I take my other Doom Whale and I just reform it back to head the other way. The way my lines are mustered in the center here, there's no room for it to really maneuver, and yeah. My Hell Pit Abomination takes the bait, turns around, and goes into the Dark Riders. And I get a Scorch off in the magic phase, and it lands, rightly so, and it takes off 6 of the Spearmen. Now, it would have took off a hell of a lot more because it landed dead center. I think it did 16 hits, needs 3s to wounds, and he would have no save. But Malekith gives him magic resistance 2, so he managed to save the brunt of them from death from the Scorch. Now, I go to roll for my Doom Rocket, and there's my roll. I roll 3 6s and a 3. So I choose 4 dice, of course, because that's the average. The average on 46, the lowest you can do is 14 inches. That would have put me dead center of that unit, but I roll a 21, and I fly almost off the board at this point. So that was pretty depressing. I let the Black Orc Corsairs live all for nothing. The combat here, he does no wounds to me. I managed to do a wound to him, but he sticks his leadership, and I'm still in the fight with the Bolt Thrower. In the combat here, the Hell Pit Abomination promptly dispatches the Dark Riders here, and I just reform. to go back after him. Turn 3 for the Dark Elder here. He takes his Corsairs and slams into my Clan Rats. I hold, of course, fully knowing I have plenty of support. And he takes his Charybdis and he careens into the side of my Doomwheel. Malekith and his unit tries to charge my Warlock Engineer with a Doom Rocket. I just flee, and he ends up like so. He may have tried to redirect there, but he did not make it anywhere, so he's just stuck in the middle. He opens up with his bolt throwers once again. He shaves another wound off this Hell Pit Abomination. So now it's sitting on one wound, and its survival is not very likely, but it's done the job of soaking up all the enemy fire, so I really can't complain. In the combat here, he does 2 wounds to my Doomwheel here, which I think is not so great. You know, he's hitting me on 3s, wounding me on 3s, and I don't get a save against it. So with his 5 attacks, I think he should have done a little bit better. But all for naught, I only managed to do a wound to him. Now he puts me on a leadership test because he's got a charge, he's got a flank, and he's got 2 wounds. So I need a test on, you know, -3, but my general and my BSB are within 12 inches. So pardon that, my antivirus is up. So, yeah, I got a reroll on a rerollable 7, and I stick it so we stay locked in combat. In the combat here, he goes to town on my Clan Rats. He kills 8 of them, and I only managed to do a single wound to him. He wins the combat, but I outrank him, and I stick around. My Warlock Engineer rallies, and my Doomwheel just starts to move back around the hills there. My Hell Pit makes a long bomb charge. I just angle him to go after the Spearman, and I wasn't expecting to make it, but he did make it. I forgot about my Plague Monks last turn in the building, so this turn I finally take him out. And without the Plague Monks on the field, this battle didn't look too one-sided, but once I took these Plague Monks out, and the Spearman units locked in combat with the Hell Pit Abomination, my General's unit moves up to the front, and you have this massive amount of bodies on the flank. It's looking pretty grim for this is when it starts looking really grim for the Dark Elves here. And then this happens. I just go in my shooting phase. I roll a bunch of strength 10 hits, and they all do D6 wounds with no armor saves. So I managed to do 10 wounds to the Charybdis. I blow the hell out of the thing, and that's going to be the end of the game here, as my opponent concedes as he sees that his Malekith and his Spearmen are going to be trounced by my General's unit, and then take my take the Plague Monks into the flank. Nothing's really going to be able to survive that. So, some notes here. The Dreaded 13th. I mean, I really hope when the Skaven book gets redone that doesn't go away, because it is such a fun spell. Take 46 wounds with no saves of any kind allowed. So, yeah, as long as you're pretty good at rolling dice, which my dice rolled really high this game, thankfully not so much for leadership tests. The Dreaded 13th was a death blow that there really was no coming back from in this game. Obviously, his hammer unit was the Blackguard, and so expensive in the new book, and only 20 of them. All it took was 1/13 to really take that unit out, and that was just, you know, you could taste the tears at that point. I felt really bad, but, you know, that's the Dreaded 13th for you. I mean, I did have to 6 dice and risk my caster's potential life to do it, and it paid off dividends in this game. The Doom Wheels in this game, I just ended up tripping up all over myself with the Doom Wheels. I mean, not being able to put one on each flank really limited the use I could really get out of them. Putting them so close to each other forced me to really kind of dance around each other, which it's bad enough I kind of had to dance around the Charybdis, which I don't have a problem with. But the fact that I had to worry about shooting myself with lightning really made me very hesitant to really do what I really like to do with the Doom Wheels, which is cause havoc on the flanks and then, you know, fold inwards. So the Doom Wheels really didn't perform very well this game, but, you know, they didn't give up any points either, so they definitely didn't hurt me too bad. This is a good indication of this battle. It's definitely outnumbered, outclassed. I mean, you pay such a premium for the Dark Elves, and you got to think, at what point does it outweigh just having bodies? And in this kind of match, you know, that one magic spell really swayed, the numbers game, but I had so many bodies on the field, and I know the rerolls are great and all, but at some point, just the sheer amount of bodies is just too much to handle. And with the Skaven book as it is now, this list has well over 150 models in it just in rank and file, which can be very difficult to deal with, and it looks quite daunting from the other side of the board when you're sitting there with, yeah, you got 90 specialized killy elves, but when it's almost 2 to 1, it can really be daunting. Malekith, never really seen him used before in the new book. He's definitely a pretty good character. He's a level 4 who can fight, which is always nice. He's got a lot of handy tricks, and just being able to, if you fail the cast or dispel, rolling that extra dice is pretty awesome. And it really paid dividends in his magic phase. Unfortunately, it doesn't save you against irresistibles. But Malekith's definitely a very interesting hero. He's kind of scary, and he definitely has some dominance in the magic phase compared to other casters. So Malekith's very neat. And the next one, Doombolt. What a scary spell this is. Now, 2d6 strength 5 hits is pretty scary. That can take out a lot of things. All you got to do is get one hot roll, and 2d6 strength 5 hits can really do a lot of damage, even to elite infantry that are toughness 4 or toughness 3 with a heavy armor. I mean, you're just peeling models off. And then he tried a few times this game to double 6. He went for 6 dice on the boosted Doombolt on my my Skaven unit once, my Storm Vermin unit. He tried the boosted Doombolt on that, and he was just out of range, but we did roll the damage on it. We rolled it as if it went through, and then we checked the range. He was just barely out of range, but he managed to kill like 18 or 19, almost half the unit of Storm Vermin with that spell. And granted, I felt quite fortunate when he was out of range, but that spell has the potential not only devastate units, but it can just instant delete monsters. I mean, that against my Hell Pit, there is no way that thing's going to survive. So, yeah, Doombolt is, I just find myself, when I'm facing Dark Elves now, Doombolt is probably the scariest spell in their arsenal, and it's something you definitely have to watch out for. So, victory to the Skaven. Thank you very much. I'll check you next time.